want to first acknowledge some of the special guests we have here today. We have a number of special guests, and some we'll save for later. But this morning, first we have Class 1 Long Island football champions, the Freeport Red Devils. In the title game, the Red Devils took home their second Long Island championship in 3 years and 6th overall. Congratulations, and please come up for the presentation of a citation. And I invite the town council to join us.
No complaints. Merry Christmas to you as well. Thank you.
What happened?
We're going to take a picture and then bring you back here.
I know. Oh, they're taking pictures.
Oh, no, it's 7 p.m. No, I watched it earlier.
Right. Yeah.
You said it at the
No. Have you ever had a successful
They shut it off. Because I watched it on the live stream. They didn't put it out. You heard him saying it, because I didn't watch it with you. I watched it on the live stream while it was happening. They shut it off. She's not doing I have to watch it.
That's my question.
Football, that's how I right here.
Okay, so our second group of honored guests here today are the Class A state champions, the Wantagh Girls Varsity Volleyball Team. And who beat Niagara Regional High School to win their first state title since 2001. Let's give them a big round of applause. So we thank you. We're so proud of our student athletes in the town of Hempstead. We thank you for being with us here today. We keep up the good work and study hard in school. Thanks, Scott. We ask that you fill out a slip and give it to our public safety officer. After the meeting is adjourned, we will follow our tradition to remain in session to hear public comment. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Ambrosino. Here. Councilman Blakeman. Here. Councilman Diaz-Casito.
I'm here.
Councilman Dunn.
Here.
Councilman Supervisor Gillen.
Here. I would now ask Councilman Diaz-Pasito to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody rise.
Your hand over your heart, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd ask everyone to please remain standing for a moment of silence to remember President George Bush.
Supervisor, I'd also like to rise to a point of personal privilege to recognize a very outstanding member of the Valley Stream community who passed away last night. Her name is Mary Ann Cahill. Mary Ann was a Nassau County Police Department school crossing guard for over 30 years on the corner of Rockaway Avenue and West Jamaica Avenue in Valley Stream, making sure that the kids got to school safely. As a matter of fact, due to her diligence and her tenure as a school crossing guard, I'm happy to say that the Village of Valley Stream actually named that corner the Mary Ann Cahill corner. In addition, she was known as the First Lady of Valley Stream, as her husband was the mayor of Valley Stream for a long number of years. So I'd like that we remain standing for a moment of silence for a great Nassau County, town of Hempstead resident, Mary Ann Cahill.
Thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk, will you please call our first public hearing?
Petition of Commissioner of Buildings to demolish...
Excuse me, Supervisor, before we call the first item on the calendar, at this time I would move to suspend the rules and that we call item number 23 on the administrative calendar first.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on the motion to suspend the rules to call item 23?
Councilman Ambrosino. Aye. Councilman Blakely.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Aye. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Ma'am, I have a motion on this item.
You want to call 23, Madam Clerk? Yes.
Item number 23, a resolution opposing discrimination in short-term rental advertisements of the town of Hempstead.
So, I would like to say a few words about this item. It's come to our attention that an organization that we're familiar with, Airbnb, recently has engaged in the practice of excluding listings in parts of Israel. We believe that that is a discriminatory act, that it's anti-Semitic, that they are singling out Israel because of a territorial dispute, that there are territorial disputes all over the world, just to name a few. India, Pakistan, Cyprus, Greece, Turkey, just to name a few. But they didn't single them out, they just singled out Israel. So when I heard about this, I was quite concerned. And I did a little research on Airbnb, and I found out some other things about them that were troubling. First of all, a Harvard Business School study showed that Airbnb was engaged in widespread discrimination against hosts with names that sounded African American. And this was an article in the Washington Post. In addition, in San Francisco, it was found that people who were hosts on Airbnb were illegally evicting middle-class and lower-middle-class tenants from their homes so that they could make more money with Airbnb. In addition, there was a 2017 study that Airbnb drove up the pricing of middle-class housing in the communities that they were operating. Recently, the New York City Council banned Airbnb type of activities. In addition to that, Governor Cuomo, in 2016, cited Airbnb for violating local housing laws. In addition, they have been criticized for not being transparent about their pricing, engaging in a practice called drip pricing, whereby they would advertise one price and then add on fees only after the customer booked the location. And in addition, there's been a loss of tax revenue as a result of Airbnb's activities. But what brings us to today is the fact that a few years ago, this board passed anti-BDS legislation that prohibited discriminating against the state of Israel to the exclusion of other countries. In addition, we twin town with the Shomron region of Israel, which in fact is an area that would be delisted under Airbnb. Since we have proper housing and zoning authority, and since we have passed anti-BDS legislation in twin town with the Shomron, it would be very hypocritical on our part and negligent not to take action against Airbnb. That is the purpose of this legislation. So I move this legislation, and I ask my colleagues to support it. And I want to thank the principal of the Rambam School for his activism on this issue, located in my district in the village of Lawrence. Basically, the Rambam School has been involved in a lot of activities of activism, all good things. Most recently, they, along with Congressman Pete King, a Republican from Long Island, and Assemblyman Dov Hikind, a Democrat from Brooklyn, were successful in finally getting deported a Nazi war criminal who had been living in peace in Queens and was deported to Germany in spite of major objections with Germany not wanting to take this war criminal. So they have a history of activism, and we're going to hear from them in a few minutes. So that's my motion.
I move to second the motion.
I too am honored to second Councilman Blakeman's important proposal. I stand with the people of Israel. I had the pleasure of visiting Israel a couple of years back. I went to the Gaza Strip. There's no more important ally to the United States than Israel, and I'm proud to second this motion.
Well, I second it because I have fought against discrimination my entire life. And this to me is not acceptable to anyone in any country, especially not in this one.
I too just want to welcome all those that are here. Bruce and I share representing the 5 towns, so many of you live in my district. I want to wish you all a happy Hanukkah, and thank you for being here today. I know that, as Bruce mentioned, we've taken great steps here in the town of Hempstead against anti-Semitism, first passing our anti-BDS legislation. And today, this is just another step in making it crystal clear that there is no room in America's largest township for anti-Semitism.
As supervisor of the town of Hempstead, I too represent all of the areas in the 5 towns, and I'm glad to stand against discrimination in any form, and recognize, of course, that Israel is our staunchest ally, and I'm happy to support Israel. So now I have a number of slips of people who would like to be heard. I have Hillel Goldman.
And I'd like to introduce Zef Mayor Freeman, the Dean of Rambam Center.
Thank you. It's a great honor for me to be here from the town board, child of Holocaust survivors, and it's unimaginable for my parents and family members that passed away to be able to speak freely in a great country where there's freedom and justice for all. First, I want to acknowledge and thank Councilor Sylvia Cabana, Councilman Arpacino, Councilman Desposito, Senior Councilman Kruspe, Supervisor Laura Gillen, Councilman Bruce Blakeman, who was instrumental in helping us push this forward. Councilwoman King Sweeney, whose dad was really instrumental in helping get a hearing in the Landfills Human Rights Commission against the Nazi war criminal that we were fighting against, Councilman Dunn and the tax collector. So the issue here is really an issue of discrimination and something that we all should speak out against. And I think the challenge that we have is when there's anti-Semitism or anti-black sentiment or anti-Hispanic sentiment, it's very difficult to know what's going on because it's rare in America today that someone's going to come out with a blatant statement. I don't like Jews, blacks, Hispanics, or whatever. It's more insidious. And, they'll talk about buzzwords. They'll talk about those from New York, which is code word for the Jewish community, perhaps, or some other buzzword where they talk about blacks or Hispanics or other groups, other ethnic groups. So how do we determine whether they're really talking about a particular group, a religious group, an ethnic group, a racial group, or they're really talking about the bigger picture? And I think the trick to this is to check their other statements and to see if there's a sense of consistency. And I think as Councilman Blakeman pointed out, and the boys who are soon going to be representing the school, Eliyahu and Avi, are going to point out, that in fact the West Bank, which is a disputed territory in the minds of Airbnb and Palestinian supporters, does in fact have listings in the West Bank, just not Jewish listings. So if you're an Arab that owns a house on the West Bank, you can list your house. If you're a Catholic, Christian, you can list your house. If you're a Jewish person, you can't list your house. It's also mentioned that northern Cyprus, which is technically occupied by Turkey, I have some sheets here if you'd like to look at them. I think I'd be I'll hand these out. If you look at it, northern Cyprus was invaded by Turkey in the 1970s, and it said the international community regards Turkey as an occupation force and has been denounced by the UN Council. But yet, if you look on the second page of this, there are listings in Airbnb, find places to stay in northern Cyprus. That seems to be very inconsistent with what they're saying. If they don't want to service what's called disputed or occupied territories, why are they servicing houses in northern Cyprus, which clearly are occupied territory by Turkey, acknowledged by the international community? Russia occupies Crimea, and there are houses listed in Russia and in the Ukraine. So I think that's number one. We have to realize there's an inconsistency here, which belies the fact that they really are looking to avoid disputed territories, but perhaps supports the fact. Another minute? Yeah. 1 moment. Okay. Anyway, so we're calling upon and hoping that the Hempstead board will support legislation as introduced that makes it very clear that the BDS movement is really not just BDS boycott, that there's been some sanctions, but it's really bias, discrimination, and segregation, and something that we all stand against. And hopefully, you'll support this, and it'll send a strong message to Airbnb that what they're doing is wrong, and hopefully we will have passed legislation. We appreciate all of your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to be heard on this item?
I will.
Wait for the students, when you wait for the students, please, get 2 students.
Can you please state your name and address for the record?
All right, my name is Avi Koenig, and I live at 382 Midwood Road in Woodmere, New York, 11598. Honored members of the Town of Hempstead Town Board, I'm here today because of the very troubling and bigoted measure instituted by Airbnb, delisting Israeli-owned houses in the West Bank from its website claiming it's disputed territory. They did not, however, delist any Palestinian-owned houses in the very same disputed territory. Furthermore, Airbnb has not delisted houses in many other disputed territories around the world, including Kashmir, the Western Sahara, and Kosovo. In fact, the only country mentioned under Airbnb's disputed regions page is Israel. This demonstrates a double standard in regards to Israel vis-a-vis the rest of the world. This is something the State Department defines as anti-Semitic. Even if we don't consider the blatant discrimination and anti-Semitism shown by Airbnb in this case, Airbnb's delisting of only Israeli houses in the West Bank is considered BDS, which stands for Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions, as I'm sure you all know. This means that Airbnb is now violating the Export Administration Act of 1979 and Rib-Coffin Amendment to the 1976 Tax Reform Act, which state that the U.S. firms cannot participate in foreign boycotts that the United States does not sanction. BDS is not sanctioned by the United States. Additionally, right here in the town of Hempstead, we have passed anti-BDS legislation, and I'm sure Airbnb qualifies as pro-BDS considering its actions in the West Bank. In light of all of this, Airbnb's position legally is contentious and is facing pending litigation on this issue from multiple sources. As a town that prides itself on diversity, tolerance, and respect for others, is this who we as a community want to be associated with? A corporation whose actions have demonstrated the antithesis of this and offended a large number of this county's constituents, both Jewish and not? So I urge all of you honored members of the town board to pass legislation against Airbnb. Such a corporation has no place in our town or any town in this country. Discrimination in any form has no place in this town, this state, this country, or any other place in the world. Thank you.
Esteemed members of the Town of Hempstead Board, good afternoon. My name is Eliyahu Levy, and I'm a senior at Rambam Sifta. Until this past November, Airbnb believed in the value of people-to-people travel, and they wanted to bring together as many people as possible. So, despite the controversial nature of the disputed territories, Airbnb listed them nonetheless. That changed when Airbnb decided to raise their moral standards and be more selective about what homes they listed. Hearing this, one might expect to see Airbnb stop listing homes in places like Crimea, Kosovo, the Falkland Islands, and the 190 other disputed territories around the globe. But that was not the case. Instead, Airbnb chose to single out Israel. Today, you could rent a lovely home from Airbnb in a territory on the eastern coast of the Black Sea called Abkhazia. Despite the high tensions over this 3,000 square mile territory, its centricity in the Georgian-Abkhazian conflict and the fact that it caused 2 wars, which in turn led to the displacement of over 400,000 people, Airbnb still has not found reason to stop listing homes in this territory, nor the other numerous disputed territories with equally tragic stories. And that's not the only discrepancy of Airbnb's decision. Airbnb didn't stop listing homes that are owned by Arabs, Muslims, or Christians. They only chose to stop listing homes owned by Israelis in the West Bank. This boycott was not an act fueled by a moral compass, but stemmed from thinly veiled anti-Semitism and discrimination against the Jewish state. As a legislature that doesn't tolerate discrimination, bigotry, or anti-Semitism, and has unanimously passed a law that denied work to companies that boycott Israeli goods and services, we urge you to see this latest form of discrimination for what it really is. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard on this item?
Bill Kachi, 1165 Bond Street, Franklin Square. This resolution has some errors that need to be corrected. Where this resolution states that, and I quote, such discrimination demonstrates hatred, prejudice, ignorance, and hypocrisy. This needs to be changed that such discrimination demonstrates concern for international law. This is what Airbnb's position is as stated in their press release. Airbnb's position is the same position held by the International Court and most world powers, and that is settlements on the West Bank are illegal under international law. Airbnb's position has nothing to do with hatred. Part of Airbnb's statement to the press said the following: we know that people will disagree with this decision and appreciate their perspective. This is a controversial issue. There are many strong views as it relates to lands that have been subject to historic and intense disputes between Israelis and Palestinians in the West Bank. Airbnb has deep respect for those views. Our hope is that someday, sooner rather than later, a framework is put in place where the entire global community is aligned, so there will be a resolution to this historic conflict and a clear path forward for everyone to follow. This statement needs to be put in our town resolution, the truth and not propaganda. Apparently, the person who wrote this resolution is the one who is ignorant because he didn't take time to do the proper research. Airbnb's reason has nothing to do with hatred, prejudice, or ignorance, and everything to do with international law.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard on this item? Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilman Ambrosino.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Mazito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby.
Aye.
Supervisor Gilman.
Aye. Madam Clerk, will you please call our first public hearing?
Before you call it, I just want to thank the Rambam School. I understand that you all have to leave because it's final exam week. Councilman Diaz-Mazito and I were thinking about passing a resolution suspending final exams for this year, but thank you all for coming, and if you have to get back to school, please feel free.
Thank you to the students and thank you to the Rabbi for joining us here today. I'm glad to show that the town of Hempstead stands with Israel, stands with our Jewish brothers and sisters in the 5 towns. I just wanted to point out for you, one of the things that was really important to me when I became supervisor was to make sure that we reach out to our constituents in the 5 towns and make sure that they have notice of everything that's going on in the town of Hempstead. And that's why I made it a point to make sure that we include in our list of publications the 5 Towns Jewish Times, because I know that that is a newspaper that many people in your community rely on. And so I hope that the board will continue to make sure that we continue to publish notices in the 5 Towns Jewish Times. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And if we could just take a 5-minute recess to let the students clear the room. Good luck on your final exams. Please call our first public hearing.
Supervisor, just a point of personal privilege, I would like to wish a happy 16th birthday to Clara Ambrosino, the daughter of Councilman Ed Ambrosino, and to please put that in the record. Thank you.
Okay, now we will call our first public hearing.
Petition of Commissioner of Buildings to demolish and remove a 1-story wood frame, 1-family dwelling with attached garage and remove all litter and debris from property in Baldwin.
I do not have any slips on this matter. Is there anyone who would like to be heard?
I want to make sure it's still morning. Good morning, happy holidays. And more importantly, happy birth month to me. So hopefully I'll be very nice and friendly. Yes, I was born on Christmas Day and I celebrate the whole month.
Happy birthday.
First month.
Happy birthday.
Just a question. I've had conversations with the representatives from DPW, so I'm pretty clear with that. I'm just hoping that when this contract goes out, that because of the new direction that we're going in, I've also just spoken with Mr. Fox, so I'm very pleased with the activity and the movement with regard to the input and integration of veteran-owned businesses in the outreach. I'm very pleased with that. So I'm just hoping that we continue along that path, that we are diverse and inclusive with regard to contracting for these types of projects in particular, and also looking at it from not just a supplier, but also a workforce opportunity for our veterans who have the skill set to do this type of work. So, as I said, I've already had the conversation as it pertains to this particular project and what it entails. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you.
Good morning and happy holidays to everyone. Project of North Brooklyn Civic Association. I do see on the agenda here there are 3 items that call for demolishing 3 buildings at 3 different locations. We do have an issue in Uniondale, and the address is 615 Uniondale Avenue. That has been a source of contention for quite a while. I have been working with John Lipinski, and I have to say, I just wanted to say that he's an excellent resource. He's very helpful, very responsive, and he's been, a great resource to Uniondale community. Thank you, John. But going forward, I do understand, and John has filled me in on what's going on with that, but I do understand that it's been purchased by a church. And for that reason, probably it's lingering and languishing because it's a church. But it doesn't matter if it's a church. It should be handled, and they should be under the same scrutiny and rules and regulations as everyone else. So it's a church, but it's still not it's still taking away from the aesthetic look of Uniondale. So whether it be a church or a private developer, it should not be there should not be any disparity. They should be handled the same way. So we want something done with that. That needs to be demolished. I brought this to the attention. John did, bring it back to Ray Swartz. They had it fenced off because it was a safety issue. Bricks were falling off of the chimney. They did fence it in, but it's still a very bad look, and it's been there for many, many years. So we would like that demolished as well. Thank you.
Is that not on Ms. David? That's not on this calendar. Thank you, Ms. David.
No, it's not on this calendar, but I tied it into the demolition of the other locations, and we have been asking for this building to be demolished for many years, and it's still sitting there. 615 Uniondale Avenue. Thank you.
I do not have any other slips on this matter. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Move that the hearing be closed and the item adopted.
Second motion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Esposito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Aye. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Petition of Commissioner of Buildings to demolish and remove the 2-story wood frame, one-family dwelling with detached garage and remove all litter and debris from the property near Island Park.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and the petition granted.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Diaz-Esposito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Petition of Commissioner of Buildings to demolish and remove the 2-story wood frame, one-family dwelling and remove all litter and debris from property in Roosevelt.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and granted.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Diaz-Esposito. Councilman Dunn. Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding regulations and restrictions to limit parking in Garden City South, Inwood, Oceanside, and West Hempstead.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move the public hearing of local law adopted.
Second motion.
Madam Clerk?
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Diaz-Esposito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding parking or standing prohibitions in Merrick and Woodmere.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Supervisor, move the hearing be closed and the item adopted.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Diaz-Esposito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn. Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding arterial stops in Baldwin Harbor, Seaford, and West Hempstead.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the hearing be closed and the item adopted.
Second motion.
Madam Clerk?
Councilman Ambrosino?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney? Senior Councilwoman Boothby? Supervisor Gillen?
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed handicap parking on public streets in Elmont near Island Park and Woodmere.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and the item adopted.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilman Ambrosino?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney? Senior Councilwoman Boothby? Supervisor Gillen?
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Application of Bola EM Realty LLC for a variance from the provisions of GSS ordinance and to include an existing gasoline service station with GSS district and install 2 additional storage tanks, each with a capacity of 12,000 gallons, located at 85-101 Hempstead Turnpike and Broad Street, West Hempstead.
Yes, Supervisor, I'm going to recuse myself from taking part in any deliberations, discussion, or vote on this matter.
You got me. Thank you. I appreciate that. Good morning, Madam Supervisor, fellow board members. My name is David Altman. I'm from the law firm of Brown Altman LLP, 538 Broad Hollow Road, 301W, Melville, New York. For the applicant, good to see everybody and wish everybody a healthy and happy holiday season. Happy New Year. Sitting to my immediate right is Chris Cartaglia from High Point Engineering. Chris is the civil engineer who designed the plans in front of you today. Also with me today, and to my immediate left, is John Breslin from Breslin Appraisals. John is a licensed New York State real estate appraiser. He has prepared a written real estate report in support of this application. At this time, Madam Supervisor, I'm going to submit that report into the record.
Thank you.
Also with us this morning, Madam Supervisor, fellow board members, is Frank Filichevko, who is back to my immediate right. Frank is a licensed New York State engineer and an expert when it comes to traffic engineering and traffic safety. His company, Stonefield Engineering, has also prepared a written report in connection with this application. I'd like to submit that report into the record as well. Both gentlemen will be available for any questions that the board may have concerning this application. To keep it brief, the property that we're dealing with is located at 85-101 Hempstead Turnpike in West Hempstead. It is known by Nassau County Tax Map Number Section 35, Block 365, Lots 205 and 206. The current zoning of the property is Business X. The applicant proposes to be admitted into the gasoline service station overlay district. It is located at the southeast corner of Hempstead Turnpike and Broad Street. The area in and around the subject property is principally commercial in nature, with residential being on the north side of, I should say, Hempstead Turnpike. The property, as the board is aware, is partially vacant, and there is a former IHOP, or International House of Pancakes, building, which was originally C of O'd in 1965 on the east side of the property. That use has been discontinued, and to my knowledge, or at least our collective knowledge, hasn't been in use for at least 5 or 6 years. The applicant, which is Bola, proposes to raise the existing IHOP building and in its place instead redevelop the overall site at this corner with the following improvements, consisting of a 4,500 square foot convenience store situated on the south side of the property. And if you look up on the video screen to my right or left, that would be the structure outlined in yellow. There will be 8 fueling positions centered on the property, running perpendicular to Hempstead Turnpike, which will provide 16 fueling positions. A pump island canopy over the fueling dispensers, approximately 34 by 126 in dimension, or 4,284 square feet. At the southeast corner of the property, the applicant will be installing a masonry trash enclosure, the design and architecture of which will match the facade of the Bola convenience store building. The applicant also proposes to install two 15,000-gallon underground fuel tanks, double-wall fiberglass fuel tanks. I'll note, Madam Chair, that the call lists them as 12,000. They're actually 15,000-gallon tanks. 23 on-site parking spaces are proposed, which is code compliant. There will be, if you notice, to the south side of the building, a drive aisle such that delivery of dry goods for the convenience store as well as trash pickup will utilize this drive aisle, such that for purposes of vehicle circulation and on-site safety, we have the ability, given the dimensions of the site, to keep trash pickup and deliveries separate from the actual parking and on-site fueling position. In addition, we will have one full movement curb cut on Broad Street along the west side of the property. There will be one right-in curb cut at the northwest corner of the property off of Hempstead Turnpike, and one full movement curb cut at the northeast corner of the property off of Hempstead Turnpike. My understanding that Hempstead Turnpike being under the jurisdiction of the New York State Department of Transportation, that New York State DOT has blessed the site access plan. In addition, the applicant, as the board will note from its package, has proposed its standard Bola sign packages. There will be a ground sign located at the northwest corner of the property and within the landscaped island. There will be a wall sign on the north facade of the convenience store building, indicating Bola Market, along with the traditional concrete Bola decorative placards, as well as a placard, concrete decorative placard on the west side of the building. The placards are not illuminated, they're concrete precast. The Bola Market sign is in fact internally illuminated. There are a number of waivers and/or variances related to the application, all of which are noted in the building department's September 5th, 2017 letter of continuation, as well as the September 5th, 2017 denial notice regarding the signs. I'll ask that those be incorporated into the record, and to the extent the board wishes, I'll certainly discuss them, but I'll ask that those particular documents be included and made part of the record. The application itself and the proposed development is in keeping with the commercial character of the area. The area itself is heavily developed commercially. Site access, as you can see, is existing, and given the dimensions of the site, circulation works well given the proposed layout. I am happy to answer any questions that the board may have, and to the extent the board has any questions of Mr. Tartaglia, Mr. Filiciotto, and Mr. Breslin, they're certainly here to do so. I will note that we do have Nassau County Planning Commission recommending local determination under 239 M&N on April 26th of 2018. And finally, we are in receipt of the town's November 26, 2018 inspection notice. I know Councilman Guzman, you and I often discuss that when it comes to these applications. I will note that the items addressed therein relate to the existing undeveloped conditions of the site, and this development will in fact eliminate all the items noted in that inspection violation report. That concludes my presentation.
But in other words, we all want to raise that building that used to be our.
We are.
Where's the flag going to be placed?
Hi, good afternoon. For the record, Chris Tartaglia, High Point Engineering. The flagpole, yes. I think a great spot for that would probably be the northwest corner, right out there, front and center, where everybody can see it in the landscaped area. It's not shown on the plan, but absolutely, positively, the applicant will agree to install it there if that meets the board's approval. Welcome.
Any other questions? One other housekeeping matter, I'm just going to submit the return receipt read cards into the record as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sure the people in West Hempstead are very happy that this is going to come down. This is a real eyesore, and especially since the national store next to it, across the street, has been closed. I don't know why. All of a sudden, it's closed.
You're referring to National Wholesale Liquidators?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they have filed bankruptcy.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. Thank you.
I make a motion that we reserve decision.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilman Diaz-Esposito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn. Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Boothby. And Supervisor Gillen.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful holiday. You too.
Madam Clerk, will you call the next public hearing, please?
Application of 671 New Bridge LLC for a permit to include existing gasoline service station within GSS district and install 2 additional storage tanks, each with a capacity of 15,000 gallons, and install 2 new pumps islands and a 14 by 53 inch canopy, and install 3 pumps, a 53-foot canopy, and install 3 pumps islands with a 24 by 82 foot canopy, and convert service bays into retail store and operate a self-service fuel station of New Bridge Road between North Jerusalem Road and Heisler Court in East Meadow.
Good morning, Supervisor Gillen, honorable members of the board. Kevin O'Brien from the firm of Murphy, Bartholomew O'Brien, offices at 22 Jericho Turnpike, Mineola, New York, here representing the applicant. Just one quick thing, just before I get kind of going on this, but I'll try to be brief. I appear before a lot of boards all throughout the island metro area, and one of the many things I love about the town of Hempstead is the way you recognize the young people and the teams and stuff like that. I don't see that as much before any of the other boards, so I commend you guys for doing that and honoring them. It's really nice to see. But with my application, you were just seated here a little while ago. You haven't moved, have you? And if I said what he said, that would be wrong also. So I do have Mr. Chris Tartaglia here from High Point Engineering, licensed professional engineer, principal from High Point, and they're the design professionals who prepared the plans, which are before the board. I also have here with me Mr. Frank Felicella, who's the traffic engineer, who's actually done some of the traffic studies, licensed professional engineer, in connection with this application as well. This application involves the existing gasoline service station at 671 Bridge Road in East Meadow, and the site is at the corner of New was previously the site of a gasoline service station. It's large. As far as gasoline service stations go, it's about 23,000 square feet and change. Just sort of a brief history. The site, according to the town records that I've reviewed, has operated as a gasoline service station since near about 1966. In its more recent incarnation, it has been operated by Lee Mills Petroleum as a Getty service station, 3-bay oriented service station. Lee Mills had brought an application before the board a number of years back, but Lee Mills is sort of a subsidiary of Getty. Getty went bankrupt. The place became vacant for a little period of time, and my client purchased it approximately 2.5 years ago. It has not operated as a gasoline service station since that time, because what I like about my client is he actually is trying to do the right thing, get all the appropriate permits to operate it properly. So not asking for forgiveness, but actually asking for permission in the first instance, which is kind of what we like to see. So with that in mind, but it is a somewhat, lengthy process. Had to go with the fire marshal's office, and the fire marshal's office has switched jurisdiction over to the health department. But I am happy to say that we do have all the appropriate approvals from the fire marshal's office. We're located on both the county road and the state roadway, and our traffic engineers have worked diligently to obtain the appropriate approvals from the state and the county. So now we're sort of, I guess maybe at the, maybe about the 15-yard line, trying to bring it home. The proposed improvements, like I said, it's vacant currently, but the underground gasoline storage tanks were already removed in accordance with the then county fire marshal requirements, now health department requirements. We're proposing to install 2 double-wall fiberglass 15,000-gallon underground gasoline storage tanks, one compartmentalized, which would have diesel and premium. The other one would just be for regular. As you see by the site plan, the site is kind of oriented towards Newbridge. There's 2 proposed pump islands over where you see sort of like the, I guess that would be tan area. So there are 2 pump islands facing towards Newbridge, and then there are 3 towards North Jerusalem with canopies covering those, which would house the fire suppression equipment and all the necessary safety equipment that's required by the health department and previously the fire marshal's office. The building itself, the square footage of the building would remain the same, the footprint would remain the same, but we would be seeking to convert that building to a retail store, convenience store type of operation. So we'd be discontinuing the sale of we'd be discontinuing the repair-oriented service station, and there would be no, because I actually remember the site from years past, and I know there was, I think, a U-Haul operation, and there were a lot of trailers and a bunch of different things over there that were kind of, obnoxious, quite frankly. So that operation was from prior owners, prior operators. We're not going to have any of that type of operation. It's going to be clean, neat, convenience operation with the new pump islands, the new tanks. So essentially, while the building itself is not being raised and rebuilt, it would be almost as if it is the footprint will remain the same, but there'll be all new facing on the outside of the building, the new canopies, the new pump islands, and the like. A lot of landscaping throughout the area of the site, and we'd be seeking self-service operation as part of the application as well. And that's pretty much the sum of the substance. So if there are any questions for myself or my professionals, or I reserve to respond to any interested observers that might.
Did you say a lot of landscaping?
Yes.
I have not seen any of. Oh, this is mine. I've been there already. Thank you, guys. But I have not seen an additional landscaping there. I like what I see, but landscaping I have not seen. I would like to know if you are able to find an area, even if you use, the pots, and put something different there. Something there. So it looks a little bit better. I like what they've done. So.
Okay, and you know what? I've got so much faith in this, in my professionals over here that they can. I'm sure they'll do it. We'll work with staff and with yourself, and whatever you'd like to see, we'll put it there.
Okay, I know my friend wants to know about a flagpole.
That's right.
Is that what you want to do? Flagpole?
Yes, ma'am.
Flagpole, well, volunteer firefighter myself, so we're all supporters of the flag. So
The American flag should proudly displayed in a nice spot.
absolutely, respectfully, proudly, we'll pick the appropriate spot, to do that. Absolutely, we'll incorporate that into site plans. Absolutely.
I have a few questions on the building itself. You say you're not going to do any structural improvement. Is it structurally sound? I mean, it's an old building. It's been there for decades and decades and decades.
It is an old building, but I will defer to my engineer.
Yes, so the building itself is going to be fully renovated. We are working within the existing 4 walls of the building, but internally it's going to be completely rebuilt and remodeled. Any structural deficiencies that are identified will be addressed at that time.
Excellent. The corner property is, I like the idea that you're going to do that's where the green is, that's where the landscape is going to be, more green on the map? Good. Because the people in the community have been complaining about it being an eyesore. And since we brought that to your attention, you cleaned the area up tremendously, you gated it off, and it does look a lot better than it did look. I do have a few questions about, you said U-Hauls. What about this leasing of trucks, boats, or other motor vehicles on the property? Anything like that?
No leasing of any equipment or no secondary, no U-Hauls and the like, or anything similar. That's correct.
Okay, now we're going to be selling things inside.
Yes.
Now, vaping may be part of what they sell, possibly.
I'm sorry?
Vaping products, cigarettes, and vaping, and that kind of thing.
You know what? I would suspect whatever you similarly see at other type of operations, that they would have similar type of products. A lot, everything from milk to lottery tickets to cigarettes and the like.
So if in fact they do,
they be compliant with all the laws and regulations.
yeah, because we did pass some laws that you have to have signage up about the vapors being dangerous, and so you'll make sure that's covered. Well, we're going to make sure it is, but I want you to know ahead of time, we're going to be coming to check in on that.
Understood, we welcome that.
Okay, so seasonal plantings in the corners, so seasonally you'll be changing it.
Yes.
We did stuff. And clean up the
Yep, automatic irrigation system to make sure that it sustains itself, and I do like that, and I know it's typically a condition, but it's a good condition. And I always say, we live here too. We want these places, we're proud of what we actually build, and if something is deceased or dead or deceased, we'll replace. So if there's a tree that dies or if there's bushes and stuff, that it'll be replaced.
Okay,
Absolutely.
and the fencing is going to have the finished side facing out.
I believe I think we're using PVC, so you have two sort of good sides, where before we used to use stockade. You'd always typically want the stockade facing the other side, because you kind of have a good side and a bad side of stockade, but we're going to be using the PVC, which has got two good sides.
Excellent. And dumpster removal is going to be done during the hours of operation, not late at night or early in the morning where you disturb the neighbors?
I'm sorry, you meant the
dumpster?
Oh, yes. Yeah, so any deliveries or removals for that matter. So whether it be deliveries of product or the garbage man coming and picking up that would be done typically at off-peak times and also at times that so as not to be disturbing to surrounding property owners. So yes, you're not going to see something in the middle of the night. Yeah, absolutely. We're cognizant of that and can adjust our schedules to meet that accordingly, and try not to be, like, I know my own personal garbage man comes at like 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, back it off a little bit.
Right, the working hours are going to be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's the full service working hours. So
It's going to be a 24-hour operation. The 7 a.m. said that may have been what they were previously operating at that location, but no, this will be a 24-hour operation.
So you're going to be cognizant of the neighbors.
Absolutely.
Good neighbors, because we will have a good with them, right, John?
We anticipate that will be inspected, and like I said, we welcome it. And if something gets brought to our attention, we'll take care of it.
I think that covers all the questions. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know if there are any interested observers that we respond to.
Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard on this public hearing?
Well, we think it's a good application. We think it's an improvement to the community. We welcome the input from the town. We'll build something that you'll be proud of, and we look for your favorable discretion. Thank you.
So may I have a motion on this item?
Being that we have a few more things with paperwork that's complete, I'm going to make a motion to close the hearing, and we will reserve the decision to take questions, please.
That's fine.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the motion.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Councilman Blakeman? Aye. Councilman Diaz-Bazio? Aye. Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney? Aye. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Aye. Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Okay, thank you so much. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and have a good day.
Thank you. Superintendent. Madam Clerk, will you please call the decision calendar?
There are 2 items on the decision calendar. The first is the application of 416 BCP Corp. for a permit to include existing gasoline service station within GSS district and install 2 additional storage tanks, each with a capacity of 15,000 gallons, and install waste oil tanks, each with a capacity of 14,000 gallons, and operate a self-service and convenience store, install 3 pump islands and canopy over said pump islands located at 940 Nassau Road, Uniondale, southeast corner of Nassau Road, and Brookside Avenue.
May I have a motion on this application?
I move the decision and recommend it is accepted.
Madam Clerk?
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Aye. Councilman Diaz-Pasito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Boothby.
Aye.
Supervisor Gilson.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next item.
The next item is the application of Dika Associates LLC for approval of the project plan for Grand Manor Estates and approving a pilot for the senior housing project affecting real property located at 2870 Grand Avenue, Baldwin, west side of Grand Avenue, 230 feet south of Barnes Avenue.
May I have a motion on this application?
Supervisor, I move that we approve the decision.
I second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilman Ambrosino.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney.
I just want to thank the members of the community and also the applicant. There's been a lot of good, productive conversation back and forth on this, and I'm grateful for that. I think at the end of the day, we came to a very good resolution. So, aye.
Senior Councilwoman Boothby.
Aye.
Supervisor Gillen.
Aye. Madam Clerk, may you please now call the administrative calendar?
Yes. There are items 12 through 73 on the administrative calendar. I also have 3 items of an urgent or emergency nature. The first is a resolution amending resolution number 1154-2018 that authorized the town attorney to retain Leventhal, Mulaney, and Blinkoff LLP to provide legal services. This will be item number 74 on the administrative calendar. The second is a resolution authorizing mailings. This will be item number 75 on the calendar. The third item is a resolution terminating the town of Hempstead's agreement with LMGI Ltd. This will be item number 76 on the calendar.
Supervisor, I also move to amend item number 43 insofar as to specifically authorize these boards to allow for a different means of publication when the board deems it appropriate.
Would any of the council members like to sever any of the items on the administrative calendar?
Supervisor, we need to vote on any motion to amend.
All right, Madam Clerk, will you?
Motion made, and I second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll on the amendment, please?
Councilman Ambrosino.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Boothby.
Aye.
Supervisor Gillen.
No. Are there any council members who would like to sever any of the items on the administrative calendar?
Okay. All right.
May I have a motion on the administrative calendar?
Oh, I move the administrative calendar 12 through 76 except for number 43.
Why didn't you separate?
Okay, I move 12 through 76 of the
Second.
calendar.
Why are they fighting?
I have a number of slips of those who would like to be heard on the administrative calendar. William Benesco.
I'll hold my.
Robert Wright. Robert Wright. Rich Shuren.
Good morning, Richard Shuren, 167 Jefferson Avenue, Colorado, New York. I'm speaking with respect to items 40 and 41 on the administrative calendar, what appears to be the conclusion of the Hog Ryle Town of Hempstead debacle and the construction of the huge development complex in my community. I have a question. My question is, why is the Town of Hempstead Board approving the site plans and accepting the SEQR negative declaration without any kind of hearing or notice to the community or anything else?
Mr. Law?
This matter has been litigated for I don't know how many years. The Town of Hempstead lost in the Court of Appeals. We made motions to re-argue. These are the last two steps we are ordered to take by the court in this matter. The secret neg deck is a resolution that says there will be no adverse impact to the community, to climate, and that is in accordance with the sequel law. That doesn't mean that there might not be traffic or anything like that, but in accordance with the sequel, which is the Environmental Quality Review Act of the state of New York, there is no adverse effect to the environment. And so that's an administrative item. And then the second item is a site plan, which then becomes purely administrative. The site plan has been submitted to the building department. The building department has passed on it. The courts have passed on it. So this is the final, these are the two final steps of the process, and there are no public hearings required.
I just want to state for the record that I've been following this matter extremely closely. And I know for a matter of fact that the court has not, in fact, directed the Town of Hempstead to approve the site plan. The litigation concerned the covenant that the Town of Hempstead attached to the project, and that was the only ruling which the court decided. And I just want to note for the record again that the community came out in force decades ago to oppose this, and in response, the Town of Hempstead legal department adopted a covenant without taking the necessary steps to make it enforceable. And as a result of the town legal department's negligence, in my opinion, the Supreme Court, the Appellate Court, and the Court of Appeals all rejected that action, which was the product of the effort of many dozens of people in the community. And as a result, the covenants were ruled improper. But it's my understanding that the court has never ruled on the site plan. And I just want to add that Bill Mueller, who we all know was previously associated with the legal department in a high-level position, told me 2 years ago, after the Court of Appeals decided against the Town of Hempstead, that the Town of Hempstead legal department had a plan to address the community's concerns, and in particular, that the site plan and other necessary steps that the developer would be taking would be analyzed by the town in public hearings, and all steps would be taken to protect the community. He assured me of this, and he told me that the Town of Hempstead had a plan. Well, it's now clear to me that the Town of Hempstead didn't have a plan and has no intent to do what it can to protect our community, and is in fact conceding, giving up on this project, and leaving us with a huge rental development in a small residential community. And I just want to put a notice out there to the people of the 5 towns. The same thing is happening with your golf course project, in my opinion. The Town of Hempstead is once again acting recklessly in a way that will result in a similar result, where the community will suffer, the developer will win, and that will be the end of it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your opinion. Supervisor, do you mind if I have Mr. Stettler just comment?
Of course.
Thank you, members of the board. My name is Todd Stecker. I'm with the firm of Berkman, Hathaway, Pearson, Petty, and Shell. I was outside counsel to the town of Hempstead. The litigation commenced by Blue Island and the Basilico Group concerning this property. Sure, I'll let this do. The litigation involved primarily a restrictive covenant that was offered by the developer in connection with the original change of zone from the property from industrial to multifamily residential. That restriction, among many that were offered, limited the owner's right to rent any of the units of the property. It was supposed to be a multifamily development and required them to be sold as condominium units. Some years after the original site plan was approved on that basis, the developer again came back to the town, requested the permission to rent several of the units for a short period of time until additional units were sold. The town granted that request. Then once again, the developer came back to the town seeking again to modify the prior site plan and the restricted covenant, this time requesting the ability to rent the majority of the units and to sell only a few of the units. The town rejected that request in that instance, and litigation was commenced. The claim was twofold in the litigation. One was a claim that the town exceeded its rights and powers in enforcing this covenant. The second was a claim under the RPAPL, Section 1951, that this covenant was of no value to the town because subsequent owners of the units would be permitted to rent out their individual units.
Mr. Stepper, just for the record, can you just identify what year this litigation began?
I believe it began in 2005, the initial litigation. It was initially commenced by the developer out in Suffolk County, trying to avoid what they thought was a home court, so there was some time spent fighting to bring it back into Nassau County, where it properly belonged. We then litigated in the state Supreme Court in Nassau County, both in an original motion to dismiss, which was denied, and a motion for summary judgment. On the summary judgment motion, the Supreme Court found that the board had exceeded its powers in enacting this resolution. Our argument, of course, was that this was a restriction that was offered by the developer, not put on the property by the town. Therefore, in accepting that in connection with the change in zone, it was a legislative act that was not subject to review by the judiciary. We appealed that to the second department, appellate division, and there they flipped the script on us. They said, "Oh no, you're right. We couldn't be challenged on that basis because it was a legislative act." But they found that under RPAPL 1951 that the restriction was of no value to the town because of the fact that subsequent owners of the properties of the individual units could rent them out. We pointed out to the court that RPAPL 1951 had only been applied in the context of individual deeds, never in the context of voiding a restriction as part of a zoning change. The court was not moved by that argument in any way. Again, we believe the court was probably incorrect in that argument. It was the first time that it had ever been applied in that matter. We did seek leave to the Court of Appeals on this issue because we thought it presented a very important issue for all of the communities in the state of New York. If a restriction offered by a developer as part of a change in zone could be removed, it would open up a lot of potential difficult situations for many communities. However, the Court of Appeals chose not to accept the appeal on that issue. And so we find ourselves here today with that restriction found to be improper. Additional restrictions that were offered, I think there were 13 in all, remaining on the property except for that restriction. And the offer of a new site plan at this point, is my understanding, I've not seen it, again, changing the property from a condominium to a rental unit, and that's where things stand at this point.
So in your opinion, I guess the town as a whole has done their due diligence over the last...
The town fought so hard that the developer was constantly writing to the community, telling them that the town was fighting too hard for this. That the town
So it seems to me at no point did anyone up here turn their back on the Island Park community or give up or wave the white flag and blow the white smoke as the previous speaker may have alluded to.
I've litigated for a lot of years. I've represented the town for several years, and I will tell you, this is about as hard as I've fought for anything or had the town direct me to fight for anything here. There clearly was our belief that they offered this in the first instance, that they should be bound by their offer. The town was good enough to grant their request to change zone based on this offer to limit what was going on here, and the town was fighting to enforce what it thought was the promise of the developer and protect the interests of its citizens. By the way, I should say that when the restriction was offered, it was offered for the benefit of the health, safety, and welfare of the community. That's what it says in the offer, and something, again, we pointed out to the courts as being very important here.
Thank you.
Felix Capacci.
Felix Picacci, 1165 Barnes Street, Franklin Square. Before I start, can we go over all the added items? Please don't deduct it from my time.
Would you like, what are you asking for? Would you like to see copies?
576.
Would you like to see copies of the resolutions we have?
Well, if you could do it in a narrative right now, because I might want to speak on it.
I think, well, 74 was amending a resolution with regards to the law firm of Mr. Leventhal, Mulaney, Blinkoff. 75 was regards to town mailings, and 76 was terminating the investigators.
Yeah, that doesn't really say anything.
Okay.
I'm saying the details, because I read the details when I go through it. How do you discuss something unless you know details? Please, can you stop the clock? I want to get the...
Is it possible we could give Mr. Procacci copies of these resolutions? So would you like to take copies and look at them, and we'll call you back later if you want to discuss them?
That'll be good.
Felix, don't say I never gave you anything.
Art Gibson?
I'd like the full comment, please.
Okay. Tim McCarthy?
I'm going to hold my comments as well.
Valerie Lamb?
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy holidays. Thank you. Item number 47, this is not whole. This is like, okay. Item number 47, regarding court vet services, again, I just have a few quick questions. Is it possible I can ask Commissioner Marino a couple of questions about this item?
Commissioner Marino, could you please step up?
Okay. All right. The first question was, how much is this contract for now? How much is going out here? Confirm additional off-site vet services rendered to the town of Hempstead Animal Shelter to court vet services.
Jerry Marino, Town Commissioner General Service for the Town. Good afternoon, Supervisor, board members, and councilwoman. We're adding an additional approximately $34,000 to the off-site vet to handle the remainder, what we believe will be the remainder of the year.
So this is not in arrears monies?
No.
Okay. My other question would be, how much...
This month, in other words.
This month?
Yeah, we're not more than 30 days.
Is that average, $34,000 a month?
Well, that's for 2 months. That we're also putting in what we believe will be for the end of the year.
Okay, and how much money have we paid them for year-to-date, for this year?
Well, if it's 180,000 and we need 34, 146. That's approximately what's encumbered. I don't know exactly how much we paid. We're not in arrears, so.
Okay, so that's just for this location, right? Okay, so what about the other location in Valley Stream Central Vet? about how much goes out to them for the year?
I don't have that in front of me. The number was less. I think we use them less because they're not 24 hours or where they are in the district. I'm not quite sure what it was.
Okay.
I believe it was a lower number.
And also, then we have a contract with the Warrenton Animal Hospital as well for emergency purposes.
That's correct. That's something new.
So all told, I'm just trying to get a ballpark figure. I won't hold you to it, I promise, but ballpark, how much money are we spending on these emergency bed places?
We have a lot, I believe, about $300,000. That doesn't mean we used it. I don't have in front of me the other two.
Okay.
What we do, but that's about what we have.
Okay, maybe you and I can sit down one day and go over those numbers because I'm
Very simple. You could just, call my office.
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Okay, I'm just wondering if maybe it might behoove the town to actually contract vets to have on staff as opposed to these emergency locations that it seems like between falling arrears and then obviously all this other money going out and then projected for more, maybe we could save money that way, I don't know.
Well, actually, see, there's another resolution on that we're asking the town board for Dr. Singh. It was a bid for an off-site vet. He was the sole bidder on it. If he was the sole bidder, I guess there aren't that many people that are in that genre or type of business or were notified.
Well, where was
The only
that
one
at?
that was advertised in the normal locations.
What is that?
The New York State website, the local newspaper, and on the town of Hempstead website.
So not Indeed.com?
Just the usual places that we normally do.
Okay, just for future reference, if you want to talk to Diane or myself, there are several websites that are specific to pet professionals and vets that a lot of people navigate towards. Most people that are interested in this line of work are not going to constantly go to like the Town of Hempstead website, but yeah.
Of course it would, bring recommendations to the town board. Also, one of the reasons is these are 24-hour vets. And even if we contracted or hired another veterinarian to keep them on at midnight is kind of a little...
Mr. Savin, would you mind connecting with Commissioner Marino after the meeting to see if we could, as far as publication and all that, to make sure that we're reaching out to as many people as possible? Because I think that's probably pretty easy. Okay, awesome. Thanks.
There's also a really good network of, it's called American Pet Professionals. I know Nancy, I can put you in touch with her. Okay, speaking of vets, actually, Councilman Blakeman, hi, how are you? Several months ago, when we brought up the anti-Semitic remark that was cast onto me by Dr. What's-his-face? Siegel, thank you. You told my fiance, my Jewish fiance, that you were going to follow that case very closely. Do you happen to know anything that came out of that, or what the conclusion was? Was there any type of discipline or anything?
No, to my knowledge, there was no factual basis to support that allegation, but it wasn't.
Wait, hold on. This is an internal investigation. The best I will say is that the matter was looked into and it was addressed. And other than that, I can't address it.
Excuse me. Did you just say that it was baseless? Like what I said was not true?
I said that we didn't have supporting evidence for that.
But he didn't deny it.
The matter?
The investigator himself told me.
I'm going to refer to legal counsel on that. But if you want to talk to me about it offline, I'm happy to talk to you about it. If you have any other new evidence, I would certainly be willing to consider it.
Thank you.
I will. I just have a quick question though. If I bring you new evidence, what kind of assurance do I get in terms of that there will be some type of repercussion?
If anyone associated with the town of Hempstead is engaged in discrimination, bigotry, racism, including anti-Semitism, believe me, if there is substantial evidence of that, there will be repercussions.
Okay, I'd like to make an appointment with you as soon as possible.
Please see Debbie right there. She keeps my appointments and she'll be happy to give you one.
Thank you. Nita Meredith?
non-resident birth month person. Item 25, 26, 29, 30, 31, actually 28, 27. Just a note, since I've got 3 minutes, so probably. Those are all youth related. I'm just hoping that we can, again, start looking at doing some grants that are focused on developing more research and background as it pertains to our veteran population so that we can expand programs and services for them. Item 49, I'm not sure what that is about, authorizing the refunding of certain outstanding zero bonds and et cetera, the establishment of a contingency and tax stabilization reserve fund. Does that mean that the town is going to be paying off some of our taxes?
Is the controller here? Mr. Controller. So we're looking at refinancing some of our debt because we think we can take advantage of favorable interest rates. Controller, could you elaborate a little bit further on that, please?
Supervisor and a member of the Town Council, we have an opportunity to refund a series of bonds that were floated in 2010, known as Series A bonds. Our financial advisor, who looks after our interest in terms of all refunding, did a present value analysis. This refunding will save the town under current market conditions approximately $1 billion, about $985,000. What we've done is attached to this resolution the creation of a reserve account so as to capture the savings, put the monies in a reserve account where 2/3 of the town board would vote to disperse those funds to one of either 2 items. One, to reduce taxes, or the second, to go ahead and replenish our fund balance. What we're doing is we're capturing savings, and we're designating those savings for, again, a reduction in our tax levy and/or a replenishment of fund balance.
So that is part of the establishment of a contingency and tax stabilization reserve fund? Correct. Okay. Then who would make the determination as to which item, whether it's 1 or 2?
That would be the town board.
Okay.
A vote of 2/3 of the town board would make that. And it could be one or the other, or a combination of both.
Okay. So how would this information be shared with the public? I mean, because clearly the public, the taxpayer, I would say the majority select item 1.
That would be a conversation we have with the town board. Okay. In terms of the dollars, they would be memorialized in our financial statements, our AUD, our audited financial statements, and the like.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to get clarification on that one. Thank you. Item 50, just quickly, with regard to the payments to, again, Newsday and Richner Communications, just again, a request as it pertains to being more inclusive in the publications that our monies are going to. Again, with regard to the list that the town clerk and others utilize, that we are inclusive of minority publications, even though struggling as they are, getting advertisement from our tax-supported efforts would maybe help them to stay in business. And also the foreign language publications. We have a very diverse community that is left out of that scenario, so if we can do that, that would be appreciated. These new items, again, I appreciate getting the copy. As Felix mentioned earlier, it's kind of hard to make any kind of discussion points on a couple of lines. I mean, I understand the constraints that the clerk has to operate under, but for those of us who do stay at the meetings, it would be nice if we could get these additional amendments, in a timely fashion. Because I do have some comments on that, so I'm just begging discretion that I can get an additional minute or so. I'll try to be brief with that. But the legal services, I'm just curious again, this is as needed. We're talking about $275 per hour. Just concerned that again, we seem to be putting funding and resources into a whole lot of legal and professional services. And again, I'm seeing the same names as far as some of these law firms. There are, again, minority and women-owned law firms. Again, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we have to also broaden the scope in that area as well. The mailings, always concerned about mailings. And again, that was one of the issues that you kind of campaigned on.
I didn't offer this resolution.
I understand, and I understand the history of it. I also understand, the need to be able to reach out to your constituency. But I'm concerned about where this could potentially go if there is no fiscal restraint as well as the timing. It just seemed like in the past, and I know we're trying to move forward, but in the past, there was a plethora of mailings that always seemed to occur around elections that had relatively little information of value to those of us that are, many of us who are out here working 2 and 3 jobs just to pay for all these bills.
I agree with you 100%, and that's why I've dramatically reduced the number of mailings that have gone out from the town of Hempstead.
And we definitely appreciate that. Terminating a private investigator, why did we have a private investigator? How much did we pay a private investigator? And, again, where are we going with the type of things that we're increasing the number of legal services that we're paying for? We're bringing in private investigators. We're paying for the law firm to protect this law firm against this. Who's protecting the interests of the taxpayers? That's definitely a concern for residents who cannot attend these meetings. So we're going to talk about what can go in a mailing. If we better promoted the importance and the timeliness of the schedule with evening meetings, we might be able to get more residents who need to be here to come in the evenings.
Thank you. And again, I put forward a calendar, I believe, and I'm not sure of the exact number, but I can confirm it with you, with 14 evening meetings, and that was changed by the town council, not by me.
Like I said, I'm just hoping that we can all work together a little better going into 2019.
Me too.
Thank you.
Mary Ellen Craig?
Good afternoon, Mary Ellen Craig, 436 Locust Avenue, Uniondale. So on item number 42, I'd like to compliment you on pursuing the solar energy area, and think it's a great idea, so keep on.
Thank you.
On 45, what is the item that transfer of funds from the town board, council managed district majority, other account to supervisor? What is that about?
So there's an employee who's under the DGS umbrella who has been providing services for my office, so it was charged back to the supervisor's office, but in the budget amendments, it was charged over to the town board, but this person still renders services for my office, so it's just a correction of that.
Thank you. I'd like to add my comments also to Ms. Merridays about MWBE, and there needs to be more outreach. Our youth project uses the services of an MWBE to provide supplies, office supplies and things like that, and I'd like to encourage the town to do that type of thing. Okay, on authorized mailings, number 75. I have here 3 mailings which come from the town of Hempstead Sanitation Department. One is a sweeping schedule directly to my house. One is a sanitation collection schedule, also directly to my house, and the third is about the hazardous waste, and that is an ECRWSS, so that goes out a blast to all residents. And they're all from the sanitation department. Why aren't they combined?
Commissioner, we have tried to combine things on one mailer. For example, different events that have gone out from the Parks Department, those have tried to be combined. Commissioner, is it possible that we could combine these, or is there timing issues?
I supervise the board. This year, they are going to be combined into one program. Last year, we added some shredding programs, at your direction, and then we put out a mailer to some of those.
Right, we didn't have a contractor for the shredding, is that correct? We had to pay for a contractor, and then we had to put it out after we had someone to do the shredding. Is that correct?
Correct myself, we didn't do it for the shredding, we did it for stop and e-waste.
Okay.
Participation in the shredding, I think, would have been much better had we done that. That's actually what I meant to say. So
Thank you.
this year, they'll be in the fight schedule.
Okay, so we'll get one mailing with all of these different items.
That's correct.
Brilliant, glad to hear it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
These,
Street sweeping, I can't speak to.
it's also sanitation.
That's highway.
Well, it says, sweeping schedule.
Commissioner Toscano? Is there a way we can combine any schedules that you're sending out from the Highway Department?
Highways, my mistake.
Good afternoon, Supervisor, members of the town board. When the sweeping schedule goes out, it's individual to each address in the town. So it's different schedules for different days that are being cleaned. They're being cleaned at that time. It would be very difficult to join that with another type of schedule, like the stop schedule.
I see.
Is that what this C means, that it's a different area?
You're on a C schedule.
But do we only send the sweeping schedule out once?
Yes.
Thank you. And the other question is about the Uniondale location for the parking. This is a public hearing coming up in January, and I'm just wondering where the location is in Uniondale, please.
Oh, we're calling for a public hearing.
That's number 69.
Mr. Reed, can you help us out on that one?
Good afternoon, Supervisor, town board members. I can get this straight information as this is for an upcoming town board meeting. I have a contact number and I'll get the information for it.
Is that okay, Ms. Gregg? We'll get you that information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Felix Bacacci?
Felix Bacacci, 1165 Bond Street, Franklin Square, New York. On the legal services that are the addition to the administrative calendar, relating to ethics and best practices, I think you're wasting your money on this. We currently break the law and we don't care. So unless you have people who care about the law, hiring a law firm is not going to help anything. As far as the resolution to authorize mailing, I gave my opinion, I think, the last meeting before, regarding a public option, so people can opt out of it or really opt into it, which is better, because then you really know whether the people want to do it. We're going to go back to the time when we have $2 million in postage. It's a waste of time. I got this mailing a couple of weeks ago. It's a waste of money. I adopt animals all the time. I have 5 cats and a dog. They send it to me. I would opt out of that, and you would save money, and most people don't adopt animals. You spend $35,000 on this. You could do a lot of good for animals with that $35,000 besides sending it to every person who's not going to use it anyway. As far as the newspaper ads, even with the adjustment of the language, the way I understand it appropriate, you can't change the newspapers from week to week. If I'm a contractor and I depend on looking in the paper for public notices or wherever I look, if you change that location because LIBN can't make it that week and you're going to move it to another paper, I would think that it was missing. I'm not going to think to go to another newspaper. And also, I was on the list of the Franklin Square Bulletin, and it's to my knowledge that we have an employee of the town owns and runs that paper, and I believe that is a conflict of interest. I noticed the articles are a bit on the biased side, to say the least, so we should really vet who the editors are of papers to make sure we don't have town employees running the newspapers, because that's conflict of interest. Yeah, I just want to emphasize, for those who want to do the believe in mailings, send the mailing out to residents, 2 mailings, one in January, one in like April. Same mailing with a return postage paid. Ask people, do you want to receive mailings? And which mailings they want to receive. They can check off they want to receive animal shelter mailings, the schedules and whatever, the calendar. And those people will receive it, and the rest will go online. And I just suggest that we redesign our website so the public notices are up front, like you would read a paper, so people could just look at them and with electronics, we categorize them. So they don't, if they're interested in real estate, if they're interested in foreclosures or whatever it is, town board meetings, we could do something that the papers don't do. So we could, really target the audience that really wants to read those things.
Thank you, Mr. Kashi.
Happy holidays, Felix.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard on the administrative calendar? Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Ambrosino.
Aye, except on item 67, I recuse myself on Steve Smurf.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Bazito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Bluthie. Supervisor Gillen.
I vote aye, except for item number 34. I have nothing against Mr. Marino. I feel he does a good job for the town. However, this board voted on an RFP process, and this should have been done as a part of that process, so I vote no. With respect to number 43, giving notices strictly to LIDN, even as amended, the decision to limit legal notices to 1 paper with limited availability to our residents is rather disappointing. The reach of the Long Island Business News outside of Suffolk County is only a little over 1,000 people. It is a subscriber-based paper and not available to our residents openly. Additionally, while this publication does a good job for our business community, it provides little benefit to our residents as a whole. By contrast, the Anton publications have a circulation of over 66,000. The Five Towns Jewish Times has a circulation of 20,000 and is exclusively relied upon by many in the Five Towns area. Noticias Long Island has over 100,000 print and digital subscribers here on Long Island, and the Herald papers have a circulation of over 72,000 here in the town of Hempstead. Utilizing these papers provides our residents with notice of public hearings and other important items happening in the town. I cannot support shutting out our residents, so I vote no. On number 49, the bond refinancing, I just would like to add, I'm happy to see that we are looking finally to refinancing our debt in the town of Hempstead and saving our residents money, and I want to thank the Comptroller for working so diligently on this and your staff. Thank you so much for your efforts. On items 57 through 66, these items should have been brought to our attention by the department sooner as they relate to services and programs that our community needs. I feel these items also should have been handled with the board-approved RFP process. My office attempted to negotiate an extension of these agreements so a new process could be followed without any disruption to services, but this request was not accepted. It is my expectation that the department will follow the policy that was set forward by this board and be consistent with that policy, moving the town in a different direction, a process that is more transparent and sets up fair competition and better pricing. With respect to these items, I also vote no, but many of the contractors I will know are excellent. It's just that the process was not filed. With respect to the emergency hand-ups, item number 74, my understanding is Mr. Leventhal was providing advice outside of the scope of ethics anyway, so I guess I'll vote yes on that one. Number 75, I vote very much against number 75. We have too much mail in the town of Hempstead as it is. And number 76, with respect to the terminating our outside investigators, I'm very much against that because we need outside investigators. The reason we need outside investigators are there are times when our inside investigators who work within the town attorney's office may have a conflict of interest because, for example, we recently had a case where someone inside the town attorney's office was being investigated. So we can't have people investigating people that they work with. That's why we need outside investigators. So I vote no on item 76.
Before we adjourn, I would just like to make one comment. If we're going to take, I guess, last rights to speak about mailing and discuss that there's already too much mailing, I mean, how about the last mailing that went out about the tree lighting that cost about $45,000 and was attended by about 50 people? So that's about $1,100 per person for everyone who attended the tree lighting.
I do not have the numbers of who attended the tree light, but it was a new event in the town of Hempstead.
Well, it was $45,000, so how many people were there?
I understand that there was a great number of attendees at the skating session, and I received nothing but congratulations and praise from the people who attended.
And I'm glad it was a great event, but if we're going to focus on mailing and we're going to say that there's too much mailing, let's focus on mailings across the board. It's not just board members or receiver of taxes or clerks that are spending money. It's also your office. Make a Difference Award, $45,000. Holiday tree lighting, $45,000. Budget meetings that were mailed and then delivered days after the actually meetings occurred, $40,000. I mean, let's call it on the face what it is.
We can have a fuller discussion of mailings, and I'd love to have that discussion in private. I just don't have the statistics in front of me, and I commend Commissioner Lino and the park staff for doing an amazing job with this tree lighting. They created a really nice event for our residents, and I thank you, Commissioner Lino, for your efforts in this regard. You really did a nice job for our
Let's not spin this around that we're attacking
children of our community.
I'm very, very happy with all the CSEA workforce. What I'm focusing on, Commissioner Lino and the people that work in the Parks Department aren't the ones that decided to hurry up a mailing on overtime and send out for $45,000. That was your office. So to all the commissioners here, let's not spin this around that this is department by department. We're talking about who authorized sending the mailings out.
This was a Parks Department mailer, and Councilman Diaz-Zito, I can't wait to review 2017 and look at all the mailers that you sent out with Mr. Santino. I can't wait to review those mailers.
We should not do this.
Excuse me,
you gotta call my name.
First of all, you want to speak on the administrative calendar? I'm sorry.
I have a statement.
You can speak. I'm just going to. You can speak first in public comment. Thank you.
Okay. What I would like for Mr. Roth to explain, when we had a person in your department who had to be investigated, how did we handle that?
Excellent question. Without using any names, there was a complaint lodged against a non-attorney who worked in the town attorney's office. It was thought that since the investigators who were already assigned to the department knew the individual, that an outside investigatory firm should look into it. And that's why these investigators were hired.
Mr. Roth, has that investigation been completed?
Yes, it has been.
So is there a need to have the investigators right now? And should the need arise that we have to hire investigators in the future, can we do that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so that's the reason that happened.
Mr. Roth, but we have to wait for
I'm not finished.
You can continue. I just want to follow up on this line of questioning.
I would like
Mr. Roth,
let me finish my questions first. You're out of order, Supervisor. You're out of order because, no, you are, because I have the floor and you're taking it from me.
I'm just following up on the line of question that Councilwoman Sweeney interrupted you first. So I'm just following up on her line of questioning. Mr. Roth, if a situation arises where we need to do an investigation, so we would then have to wait for the next town board meeting before we can start an investigation. Is that correct?
Well, if the situation comes up, the board can always pass a resolution retroactive to the date that the new investigator was put in service. Like that is possible to do. We've done that in the past.
But if the board didn't pass the resolution, then we could put someone to work and not be authorized to pay them. Is that correct?
The person who we reach out to and say, listen, there's going to be a resolution hiring you in 2 weeks, but we want you to start today, that person basically works at their own peril.
That's not very inciting.
exciting and inviting way to start a job.
I think it's just important to clarify the reason we hired this investigative firm is because there was an active concern, something that needed to be investigated. That is no longer the case. The idea of the board was never to have this just roving body of outside investigators. We have people on staff to handle that. Should the need arise, we can hire outside investigators. I think we're making this a lot more complicated than it is.
Adjourn.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilman Ambrosino. Councilman Blakeman. Councilman Diaz-Bazio.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Councilwoman King Sweeney. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby. Supervisor Gill.
Aye. Okay, the lady who didn't get called for the administrative calendar, would you like to come forward for public comment?
I'm not sure how it would work. I have just a few questions. Big one was, wouldn't it be prudent if Ms. Gillen had 4-year term like the rest of you do? I think that's sort of a crazy kind of thing.
Not really.
Well, could you give me some reasons why it would be a good idea? Excuse me?
It's a matter of state law.
No, you could change it.
Could you give me something proof that it's state law? It doesn't make any sense.
It's state law.
Okay, well,
not.
it would have to be changed by, the other question I have, what?
You need a referendum. All of the residents of the town of Hempstead would have to vote to change the term of the supervisor from 2 to 4 years.
Well, I think that would be a good idea to think about and talk about it, and it would just be so good. I just don't want to, you make me crazy with myself. But the next question I have is, I was noticing that the reports after the town meeting were only in the Long Island Business paper, and they weren't in Newsday or the Herald. And I understand you put it into the Five Town Jewish Times. But is that true? I mean, was it an oversight, or you just didn't want to pay them, or is it because they have a more liberal view? I have no idea.
No, earlier in the year, the town board voted to expand our publications. The prior administration had limited them to just the Long Island Business News, if I'm correct, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Roth. But we voted, I think unanimously to expand the publications that we use to publish notices for the town board. The resolution that passed today awards it to the Long Island Business News, which has a subscription of about, I think, 1,200 in Nassau County entirely. And they said they put forward an amendment that they could tweak it to, on an as-needed, as-voted basis, expand it beyond the Long Island Business News. I think that's the opposite of transparency. That's why I voted against it.
Excuse me, let me just comment.
It's true that it's not in Newsday or the Herald, right?
It's now restricted.
If I could just calmly explain the reason we did this, it was during the budget process, and it was an opportunity to save a tremendous amount of money by going to the Long Island Business News. Also, we encourage people as much as possible to go online, so we don't have to, it's just all about saving money. That's all.
It's all about saving money. I never laid eyes on the Long Island Business News. Why would you put it in the comment?
It's also available online on our website.
Everything else that was online wasn't a good idea, and now this is a good idea to put Newsday online?
I'm not sure what you're saying about.
Hold on one second. Actually, Mr. Raw, I do believe that we may have a legal requirement to publish in a paper of general publication. So I'm wondering if maybe we could get a legal opinion on whether or not the Long Island Business News actually qualifies, since it's only distributed to about 1,200 households in Nassau County, and that's not even the town of Hempstead, that's Nassau County.
At the time, a few years ago, when Long Island Business News was proposed, that was done, and they do meet the definition of a newspaper of general circulation.
Could I get that in writing? It's just a question of fiscal prudence. That's all this is about.
Okay, next question. Now, I don't know if this is true or not, so I'm going to ask you. Was it true that Don Clavin requested $50,000 for a flyer and was refused by them? Is that true?
That is true.
That is true. Now, what was going to be in the flyer?
Information about assessments, the Nassau County assessment system.
And was his name going to be all over it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ann Bowl? Oh. You're in the public comment section. Diane Madden?
Diane Madden, Hempstead. 2 years is more than enough time. We're counting the days. I'd like to talk about the photo policy still at the Town of Hempstead Animal Shelter. Mr. Rondo's changes were not made, just so you know. And Councilman D'Esposito, I loved your suggestion and request actually for a meeting for staff. I think you stated that you also found it a little confusing. The staff does. As far as I know, there's not been a meeting. And a doctor came in the other day and asked to photograph a dog she wanted to show to her family. The escort, and my goodness, these young men and women do not want to be called escorts. I wish you would have come up with another term. Was upright. I can't tell you, every time I go in there, they express that. In any case, this person did not know. Went to the front counter, they don't know. So as in this common administration's constant chaos, can you please follow through with that and make sure that a meeting is had with every employee, that they understand that the photo policy is that photos are permitted in the public areas of the shelter and of the animals on the public floor?
Commissioner Marino, has your staff been advised of the policies?
Yes, the staff has been apprised. We were supposed to have a meeting last Wednesday with the town attorney. There's a little glitch with timing that it hasn't, an official meeting hasn't happened, but they've been advised of our new policy.
Will you make sure you reschedule that meeting, please, Commissioner?
Can I also ask that an email go out to all of the employees as well, clarifying this policy, in case there were staff that cannot attend a meeting?
No, of course, I don't see a problem with that.
Thank you. Also, with regards to a policy where the ACOs are called sometimes, in this case, it was a dog that was critical in urgent condition. An ACO went to the scene. Indeed, the dog was critical. There were witnesses around. That's who I heard it from, distraught. He attempted many times to get permission, including from your liaison, to allow this dog to go to an urgent care center. One of the contracted vets called several times to the shelter. The dog finally seizured, was hemorrhaging, was not getting an answer. Why don't these ACOs, and I know that you, Laura Gillen, had mentioned in one of your memo promises that your staff would be reviewing all of these policies, but this policy is still in place, that these animals are suffering slowly because these ACOs cannot use their own discretion after many years of experience in picking up an animal and getting them the care that they need.
Mr. Marino, are you aware of these allegations?
Not in this specific incident, no, I'm not.
Could, Ms. Madden, if you could put those in writing and give us the details, we'll look into it.
I appreciate that. And I just want to mention as well that this particular ACO has been there many years. I don't know him personally, have probably not said 5 words to him. I watch. And for years, he would finish up his shift, and he would go to the animal shelter, and he would sit with the animals on the floor of the kennels. He would then proceed, after his shift, to take out a few dogs and walk them. There is now, under Michael Pastore, a loitering policy. He no longer does this. And as much as I'm concerned about what happened to that animal, I'm concerned what happens to these people, like this ACO, emotionally, when they're standing there watching, and neighbors in horror, as he has no control over this situation, and has been prohibited now from returning to the shelter after his shift to bond with the animals that he brought in.
Mr. Marino, are you aware of this ACO being denied access to the shelter?
I have not. I've heard of the loitering policy, but I have no idea what she's talking about.
Could you please expand on the loitering policy? Because I can tell you that It has never been in place until Mr. Pastore. I mean, there are adoptions that are stopped in the middle of adoptions because the staff is so frantic to be written up. So adopters are told, well, they have to come back. And guess what? They go to last hope. So could you please expand on this loitering policy?
The second part would have nothing to do with the loitering policy. That would probably have to do with overtime or employees staying past their shift. The loitering policy, as I know it, is when employees are finished with their shift, they should leave the premises and go home like in most industries in a timely fashion, not in 5 minutes.
I understand you're scared to death to time out a minute late. So I would understand that, with all due respect, Mr. Moreno, if this were the water department, or this was the parks department. This is an animal shelter. There are lives that depend on these people, and they depend on people to stay emotionally connected to them, to stay after, to be willing to do that. And until Mr. Pastore, they were willing to do that without overtime, without compensation, just to get animals into homes. So I ask that somebody take a look at this loitering policy and do away with it, and allow these employees the freedom to do what you hire them to do.
Thank you, Ms. Mann. Mr. Bercacci?
Felix Bercacci, 1165 Bond Street, Franklin Square. I just want to pick up from last meeting with the financial consultant and just tie it once again to the ethics. It is the understanding that we didn't put a bid for it, so we're violating our own law. This is the problem. Why are we going to hire someone to evaluate ethics when we just blatantly violate? We have no intention. And also, you've learned that John Mascherino's son works for the town, and he has for some time. I did read the Moody's report. I called him, and it made no mention of tax cuts as improving the outlook. And it, indicates that if reserves aren't added in 2019, it could lead to a downgrade. It's all moving targets, but the things that people care about as far as credit ratings is, are you able to pay your bonds? That's all they really care. They don't everything else as far as the rest of politics that they're not concerned about.
Can I ask you a question? You mentioned before about us adhering to international law. Do you believe that international law takes precedence over American law?
I'm going to continue with my statement. There's no...
So in other words, if there was an international court that said that we had to give California and Arizona back to Spain, you would support that over American law. Is that what you're saying?
I'm going to continue with my statement. I lost 4 seconds already. Also, the press release put out by the town board members, it states in part, reverses supervises tax hike and slashes spending spree. There really wasn't any spending spree. Most of the spending was what we did prior to the supervisor taking office, and at that time, no one called Murray and Santino's mailings a spending spree. I do support, though, getting rid of most of the mailings and letting the people decide, as I said many times. It seems like there is the double standard. And as far as the concern is, really, we should reduce mailings and give them to those people who want them, and that's the end of that, to save money. Don Clavin is a real problem spreading misinformation here in a tweet on his official Twitter account. He says this resident stands to have his taxes hiked 70%, but he doesn't say that his tax assessed value is less than 50% of the market value in the neighborhood. If you want to say something, that's fine, say it, but then the 70% may be the right number, but the 60% lower than market value wasn't stated in the thing. So, we do need some transparency, and also
They don't assess according to market value.
the big thing.
So how could you compare it to market value if they don't assess based on market value? That's totally inaccurate. You know that, Felix.
Okay, and another big thing that was...
Not only that, let me tell you, we won a lawsuit against the county because we always pay more money than anyone else. And here I live in Hempstead, where they're saying we have the worst schools in the nation where no one's going to come in there. She has raised my value of my home and most of the people who live there. So we have a problem.
Okay, and then there was, these are the front pages of a couple of lawsuits where there were multiple defendants. In some cases, it was the same board that protested when they were on the supervisor's lawsuit. And in each case, this was a lawsuit from my lawsuit against the town in 2012. This is one from someone else's lawsuit. And there was no cry for individual counsel for each defendant. Only in one case have I ever heard that. In the numerous cases they exist within the town of Hempstead where multiple board members were named as defendants, yet they never cried and said they needed their own counsel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Makashi. Ms. Jacobs, Carl Jacobs. William McCabe Jr.
Oh, I didn't put in to speak. Sorry.
Valerie Lamb.
Valerie Lamb. I would like to make a request to the board to please make it some kind of a resolution or a law or a rule that all of the cats that test positive for FELB should automatically be retested with blood work. It's not a lot of cats, but based on my experience picking this cat up off the street who tested positive for FELB, had we not fostered this cat with a deadly, highly contagious disease would have been put into the FELB room and most likely would have contracted the disease. So I'm simply requesting that all cats that test positive be retested with the flawless blood work. The initial test has a lot of room for human error.
Mr. Marino, can you look into that, please? Thank you.
I'd also like to ask the board to please consider the CAPA legislation, which from what I understand has been submitted to you. This is an amazing piece of legislation that will ensure that another animal such as Brock never happens again. Brock was wrongfully executed, had rescue commitments to it, and we as a township actually made a rescue jump through hoops to meet our requirements, and then the dog was murdered anyway. So I would really urge that to be passed as soon as possible. Additionally, I wanted to ask some questions about the inventory process. I think there might be a lot of money kind of escaping through the door with regards to inventory at the shelter. I can sidebar with Commissioner Marino or whoever about that. What's up with the audit, the shelter audit? What's going on?
I asked the commissioner, the controller, the Nassau County controller, to give us a status report. I believe he said it's still going to take a couple of months. It's out of our hands. It's up to the Nassau County controller. So we call his office.
We were told originally it was going to be 6 to 8 months.
That's what we were hoping for.
The adopters are not being called back. We're getting a lot of public complaints on social media that people are submitting emails and applications. Also, donations are now being complained about. People are donating items like chew toys, bones, etc. for the dogs and cat toys for the cats. And they're unaccounted for. Maybe someone can look into that. But at the end of the day, I mean, and it's sad to say, but there really is not a single department at the shelter that really has it together. Nothing shines. You know, normally when you have, let's say, a baseball team, even the worst teams have a great player or two. And it is just one complaint after another. Another person who is in my circle went to foster a sick cat. She wanted to foster an FELB cat. And she looked online and she found one that she liked and ended up, guess what? Freaking out when she got there because the cat was in dire need of medical attention, and she brought it to the staff's attention, and then she was given an attitude, and then she found another cat in the general cattery room that needed medical attention with a swollen face. And they gave her nothing but a hard time, discouraged her from fostering. And I want to be clear, this all falls under Mike Pistori, and it is time to see this gentleman to the door. Transfer him. I know that it's, I have to say this. I read the memo that you submitted out on March 9th. In your memo, it does say that he also agreed that transferring him and putting the reins into someone else's hands is in the best interest of the town. What are we waiting for? We gotta do this. We gotta do this. Every single facet of the shelter is in crisis mode. Animals are dying, there's neglect, we're losing rescues, we're losing, I just fostered a cat. I had a horrible experience from day one. From day one, I had to beg and plead and demand and make phone calls just to get a cat seen by medical. The cat was at death's door. Now, 3 months later, walking around, follows people everywhere they go, it's healthy. Is this something that we want? Like, we need a new director. It starts from the top. It always does, right?
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. Thank you for fostering the cat. Mr. Kroll?
Good afternoon. Sue Kroll, Great Neck, New York. Let's see, I don't think we can get this down in 3 minutes. By the way, Bruce, that was an excellent question you had that didn't get answered. It was very good. Anyway, I would like to start by asking the board for assistance with a rescue group actually known in Westbury, known as Pets for Love. They have a few dogs and 80 cats located in the Source Mall. Mr. Ambrosino, I think this is your district, though I wouldn't swear to that.
It is.
Okay. Anyway, I brought this to the attention of a few people. Now I'm bringing it up to everybody. This mall has been essentially vacant for a number of years, and it's now being taken over by a Chinese company called Lesso. Pets for Love is being evicted at the end of January through no fault of their own. They just want them out. I realize, of course, the board can't get involved in landlord-tenant issues, but Pets for Love serves a very significant community purpose. On a daily basis, they entertain individuals that are mentally challenged, senior citizens. They have Boy Scout groups coming in, Girl Scout groups. Anyway, I was hoping that maybe we could all get together and find a site for them that they can either purchase or rent, and I certainly would appreciate that. Anyway, I just want to bring up quickly, there have been many changes to animal welfare laws throughout the country. I'm sure you're aware of some of them. They banned greyhound racing. In Atlanta, pet stores can now only sell rescue animals. And I'd like to know also why that's not the case over here. Is it really that important that a scant few pet store owners bringing animals from puppy mills making a living on the back of abused animals? The trend is clear. People want more protection for animals than hitherto have had them before, and to ignore this obvious movement is probably not conducive to a rewarding a long political future. At this point, we seem to have reached, how am I doing on time here? At this point, we seem to have reached the point where Pastore will be shelter director until he is removed due to old age. Just recently, I heard that a very well-respected animal activist was slandered and that it was reported that her dog was surrendered and brought back to the shelter. This is patently false, and this is the malignant culture that pervades under Pastorean funds. The code of conduct is a nice idea, but we all know it would never be enforced. Instead, a dedicated volunteer is suspended. I believe it's been about 3 months now. It's still under investigation, no doubt. She actually made a complaint, which allegedly Fonte was the one that took the action. I'd like to know who's investigating this case. Mr. Roy, maybe you can tell me.
I will check.
Okay, I would certainly appreciate that. Anyway, Fonte, our pseudo-behaviorist, her contract is up for renewal very shortly. Allegedly, as I said, she was the one that initiated the complaint against the volunteer. She was eminently unqualified, and her written idea of learning about animals on the job is absurd. I recently wrote to the Yankees and told them I wanted to learn on the job, but I've yet to hear back from them. Maybe I will shortly. Anyway, if her contract is renewed by this board, it will be a clear sign that animal welfare is not a priority for its members, and then we'll have no recourse except to remember there's an act come the next election cycle. Laura, you ran on a platform of improving the animal shelter. You instituted policies of checking IDs, requiring an escort to walk about the shelter, which is absurd. It just delays everything, and there's no reason for it. Every place I know, there's no escorts required. And banning pictures for a substantial period of time. I'm not really sure what's going on with that. Anyway, I'm almost done. You allowed to remain in charge people with questionable credentials and a lack of compassion, and as far as your campaign promises regarding animals, you failed miserably.
Mia Merida? Leoncia? Manar? Monray?
Good afternoon. Leoncia Monray, Glen, New York. Actually, the reason I'm here is because I'm the suspended volunteer that I've been in the shelter for 3 years, and I've been suspended for almost 3 months for a reason
that I don't really understand because it's not true, but I've been blamed. She said that I called her emitter, something that I don't even know how to pronounce that correctly. So Fanti said that I called her that, and it's not true. Tony Costello, I believe is the name of the investigator. He called me like over a month ago, and I explained to him everything that happened September 17 out of the shelter with Fanti. And I asked him please to check and read her lips because she did call me a name. I don't want to repeat it here because I know it's going to be on record. I mean, it's going to be recorded, but it wasn't pleasant, but she called me. So, but however, she said, and she has been, like everybody's believing her, that I call her that name, but however, she's calling people on Facebook, low life, she's calling people uneducated, she's calling people that I don't know how to say that, I'm sorry, I'm nervous. And this is the way that she trained dogs, taking a dog that I never had a problem with him. I always walk him without problem, taking the dog to Starbucks. Is that the way that she works? When we have hundreds of dogs that they need help, they need a lot of behavior help. And I've been suspended. I would like to have an answer. I've been sending emails, I've been calling. I got an answer from your office, which I appreciate, and I got an answer from the chief of staff. Thank you very much, but I haven't an answer from.
Those materials that you were holding up, did you submit them to the investigator, or have you submitted them to anybody?
No, I haven't.
If you would give us copies of those, we could look into that. And Mr. Well, what's the status of this investigation?
The matter has been looked into, and as of now, there is no final determination as to whether or not she should come back. But as of now, she remains suspended.
How long is that going to take? Because I didn't say that to her at all. But however,
I can't litigate the case with you here. You can, feel free to say your side, but I can't litigate the case with you here.
so can I make an appointment to see you? Because whenever I call your office, your secretary said that you are in meetings, which I understand, but I never
I have no phone calls, just so to be clear, I have no phone calls from you.
You have no phone
I don't really know how to react to it. I'll talk to the investigators.
Because I'm the
I'll talk to the
only
investigators.
person here that has been suspended for so long in the shelter. Why? Because I didn't do anything wrong. The only thing wrong that I'm doing is that Mr. Pastor doesn't like me. Maybe because I'm Hispanic, maybe because I'm not one of those people that goes to the office, go to the shelter. Because of him, I go to the shelter because of the dogs. Because the dogs are my passion. And I will keep fighting until I get back to the shelter. Because this is not fair. Whoever is doing to me is not fair at all.
Ms. Monroy, if we can make a copy of those materials and you can submit them, we'll add them to the file to the extent the investigator doesn't have them. And someone will get back to you to let you know what the exact status of your investigation is. Thank you.
Happy holidays all.
You too. Mariana Craig?
Well, I hope you all had Happy Hanukkah. We'll have Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa. Didn't want to forget that. Going back to number 75, what kind of authorized mailings were those?
Anything they want.
Please.
It applies to all mailings.
They were not specific.
Yeah,
It
applies to all.
mailings by elected officials in the town of Hempstead.
Free for all.
Okay, so they were not other kinds of mailings of informational purpose.
Mr. Rowe, it applies to all mailings, is that correct? It applies to all mailings, Ms.
What
In
applies?
other words, I think when you said that all.
It would have been nice if we had copies of it. You know, there are those of us who are very, very interested in this. It would have been nice to have copies in the future. perhaps there could be additional copies available that can be distributed for these additional items on the agenda.
Mr. Rod, can we make an effort to do that? Ms. Cray, I'll tell you that I didn't see the handouts until right at the beginning of the meeting, so I got them pretty much on the same notice that you did.
Right, well, my notice was only authorized mailings, so that doesn't, I'll take a look at this later. I'm a fast reader, but not that fast. So I mentioned at my class that there will be no more course booklets of classes to be mailed to all the residents, and I have to say everybody was shocked and disappointed because they rely on this to know what classes are available. If there is a way to make something in a more concise manner available that would be cheaper to produce, I highly recommend it. And I've been surprised about the calendar because with the advertisements I kind of thought that that paid for itself. And it's always been a good source of information, especially of the board meetings. In addition, there's a statement that the various senior centers will be closed from such and such to such. You know, there's a lot of information in there which is not available to those of us who are not interneted, and I feel it's a type of discrimination, seriously. So I still have not learned where in the budget the items are for the cost for this mailing, the calendar of events. I have asked, now this is the third meeting, and I still do not know where it is hidden for the costs for this calendar of events.
Ms. Cray, we'll get you that. I'll have someone in my staff get you that answer.
I would appreciate it, thank you. So there've been I would like to know if the board is working on any proposed legislation for tree removal. You recall that somebody had suggested that, and I'm not asking for a huge thing, but some way of, is the board working on that?
Yes, we're looking into the tree ordinance.
Oh, very good, I'm glad to hear that. There have been a couple of instances of the public using the dumpsters over at Echo Park. There's been another one. And I'd like to know if perhaps they could be locked or something in such a way that people just can't go and throw stuff in there. You know, I'm talking about debris from various projects that people have in their own homes or whatever.
Yeah, this is the first I've heard of it. I think that we should be very diligent then in making sure that we police that and that it doesn't happen. That's actually a theft of services.
That's what I think.
Yeah, so we should not allow that, and maybe we have to put a little camera up, you know, which doesn't cost a lot of money, that could monitor that situation, because if they're using our municipal facilities for private use, that's a crime.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Ms. Cray. And Commissioner, we'll work together on trying to address that situation.
When you discussed the various newspapers, you neglected to mention the Beacon newspapers, which do serve Uniondale and Hempstead and various others. And I know you dumped the Antons and so on, but people should be aware that people in Uniondale and Hempstead rely on the Beacons for their help.
Didn't I see them? Those are included.
Those Beacons are included. Oh, okay.
I don't believe so. I believe there's not.
The whole list, no, I never forget. No, we're not getting rid of all of those.
Thank you, Ms. Cray.
Once more, I strongly suggest you work to expand the use of MWBE services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner, if you would just follow up, Ms. Cray. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, and everything that applies.